Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Offering our salutations to Ramana, who shines as the self in every being, we begin today's satsang with the prayer by Srimati Sapna Ganesh. This will be followed by the chanting of Muktaka trayam by Sri Nandakumarji.
Samurti Shankaracharya Madhyamam Ramanacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadhanam Dhyayet Sarvavighnopashantaye Angikam Bhuvanam Yasya Vachikam Sarvavangmayam Aharyam Chandrataradi Tam Namasatvikam Shivam Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Ekam aksharam hrudi nirantaram bhasati swayam likyate katham. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham maham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati. Hrudi vishamanasa svam chinvata majjata pavana chalana rudha atmanishto bhavatvam. Deham mrunmayavat jadatmakam aham buddhirna tasyastyato naham tattata bhava shukti samaya siddhatma sadbhataha ko'ham bhavayuta kuto varadhiya drishtatmanishtatmana soham spurtitaya arunachala shivaha purno vibhati swayam. Soham spurtitaya arunachala शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang with the chanting of a few verses from Upadesa Saram, which will be presented by Kumari Uma Shripati and Srimati Ashwini Balaji.
नमो रमण। कर्तुराज्ञया प्राप्यते फलम् कर्म किं परम् कर्म तज्जडम् कृतिमहोदधौ पतनकारणम् फलमशाश्वतम् गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितम् नेचया कृतम् चित्तशोधकम् मुक्तिसाधकम् कायवाङ्मना कार्यमुत्तमम् पूजनं जपश्चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगतैषधी युक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिदेवपूजनम् उत्तमस्तवादुच्चमत्तता चित्तजं जप ध्यानमुत्तमम् आज्यधारया स्रोतसासमम् सरणचिन्तनं विरलतः परम् वेदभावनात् सोऽहमित्यसौ भावनाभिदा पावनीमता भावशून्यसद्भावसुस्थिति भावनाबलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा हृस्तने मनः स्वस्थता क्रिया भक्तियोगबोधनिश्चितम्। नमो रमण।
We continue with the offering of Ramananjali Sangeetam, a few songs from the Ramananjali repertoire. We begin with the offering by Srimati V.Radha and Vallabh Srinivasan, after which we have a presentation by Savitri Krishnan and Jaisriram Krishnan, followed by a Ramananjali offering by Revathi Sankar.
Namo Ramana to all. Today I will be singing a song composed by T.N. Shastri. Anandaramana Arunachala Shivesha Namo Sahaja Karuna Namo Prakasha Anandaramana Arunachala Shivesha Namo Sahaja Karuna Namo Prakasha Anandaramana Namo 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 Hidayamoliye Namo Hidayamoliye Namo Anmavoliye எங்கெங்கும் நிறைந்த பேரின்ப வெள்ளமே ஆனந்த ரமணாம் அருணாச்சல சிவேஷாம் நமோ சஹஜ கருணா நமோ ஸ்வப்ரகாஷா ஆனந்த ரமணா நமோ 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 ನಮೋ ಇದಯ ವೆಳೆಯೇ ನಮೋ ஆன்மமொழியே எங்கெங்கும் நிறைந்த பேரின்ப வெள்ளமே ஆனந்த ரமணா அருணாச்சல சிவேஷா நமோ சஹஜ கருணா நமோ ஸ்வப்தகாசா ஆனந்த ரமணா ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ.
ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ನಂದ ಮನಸಗೆ ನಿದವನ ತುಟಿ ಮಧುವ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ಹಾಲು ಜೇನಿನ ರುಚಿಗೂ ಮೀರಿದ ಸ್ವರ್ಗ ಸುಖವನೇ ದೊರೆ ನನಗೆ ನೀಡಿದ ಹಾಲು ಜೇನಿನ ರುಚಿಗೂ ಮೀರಿದ ಸ್ವರ್ಗ ಸುಖವನೇ ದೊರೆ ನನಗೆ ನೀಡಿದ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ನನ್ನ ಮನಸ ಗೆಲಿದವನ ತುಟಿ ಮಧುಮ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ಕಣ್ಣು ತೆರೆದರೆ ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಇಲ್ಲವನು ನರಳಿರುವ ನೋವಿನಲಿ ಹೊರಳಿ ನಾನು ಕಣ್ಣು ತೆರೆದರೆ ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಇಲ್ಲವನು ನರಳಿರುವ ನೋವಿನಲಿ ಹೊರಳಿ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದನೋ ಏನೋ ನನ್ನ ರಮಣ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದನೋ ಏನೋ ನನ್ನ ರಮಣ ದಾಸಿಯದೆಯನು ಗೆದ್ದ ದಿವ್ಯ ಚರಣ ಕರೆದನ್ನಿ ಗುಂಡೆಗಳೇ ನನ್ನ ದೊರೆಯ ಕರೆದನ್ನಿ ಗುಂಡೆಗಳೇ ನನ್ನ ದೊರೆಯ ಕರೆದನ್ನಿ ಭಿನ್ನವಿಸಿ ನನ್ನ ಪೊರೆಯ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ನನ್ನ ಮನಸಗೆ ನಿದವನ ತುಟಿ ಮಧುವ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿಧೆ ನಾಸುಧೆಯ ಹೇಳಿ ಸಖಿಯರೆ ನೀವೇ ಸರಿಯದೆ ಹೇಳಿ ಮುಕ್ತಿ ಜೊತೆ ರಮಣನ ಪ್ರೇಮ ಕೇಳಿ ಹೇಳಿ ಸಖಿಯರೆ ನೀವೇ ಸರಿಯದೆ ಹೇಳಿ ಮುಕ್ತಿ ಜೊತೆ ರಮಣನ ಪ್ರೇಮ ಕೇಳಿ ನಂಬಿರುವ ದೀನಳನೋ ಬದಿಗೆ ಸರಿಸಿ ನಂಬಿರುವ ದೀನಳನೋ ಹೋಗಬಹುದೇ ಹೀಗೆ ನೋವ ಉಳಿಸಿ ಕರೆ ತಂದೆ ಗೊಂಬೆಗಳೇ ನನ್ನ ದೊರೆಯ ಕರೆ ತಂದೆ ಗೊಂಬೆಗಳೇ ನನ್ನ ದೊರೆಯ ಕರೆ ತನ್ನಿ ಭಿನ್ನವಿಸಿ ನನ್ನ ಮೋರೆಯ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿದೆ ನಾ ಸುಧೆಯ ನನ್ನ ಮನಸ ಗೆಲಿದವನ ತುಟಿ ಮಧುವ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿದೆ ನಾ ಸುಧೆಯ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿದೆ ನಾ ಸುಧೆಯ ಕನಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸವಿದೆ ನಾ ಸುಧೆಯ.
Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Bhagavan Ramana's presence is there everywhere, but we feel that more within ourselves. That is why we see it everywhere. Ingu kanda pirahudan iruppadellam avanmayam. Shardaka usually quotes this example of the song from a radio doesn't lie inside the radio. It is there everywhere, but the instrument through which we listen to is the radio. Likewise, our spiritual heart, our heart within ourselves is where we can see the instrument through which we can see Bhagavan is our own heart. So that is the temple of Bhagavan Ramana. That is the temple of Arunachaleshwara. And he gives life to whatever we do because he is present in the temple. And once he is present in that temple, there is no question of dukkha, there is no question of sorrow at all. There is only joy, there is only happiness. It is our duty to just recognize that he is residing in that temple within our own heart. I present to you a song written by Muruganar Swami. Kannada translation is by R.N. J. Gopal. Music is by S.V. Venkatraman. ಅಮೃತ ಶರಧಿ ಆನಂದದ ನಿಧಿ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ಅಮೃತ ಶರಧಿ ಆನಂದದ ನಿಧಿ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ಪ್ರೇಮದ ಮೂರುತಿ ರಮಣಾನಂದ ಭಕ್ತರ ದುಃಖ ನೀನಿಗೂ ಪ್ರೇಮದ ಮೂರುತಿ ರಮಣಾನಂದ ಭಕ್ತರ ದುಃಖ ನೀನಿಗೂ ಹೇ ತಂದೆ ಶುಕ್ಲ ಚಂದ್ರನೋಳು ಎಂದೆಂದು ಬಾಳು ನೀನೇ ಜಗತ್ತಿಗೆ ಆಧಾರ ಶುಕ್ಲ ಚಂದ್ರನೋಳು ಎಂದೆಂದು ಬಾಳು ನೀನೇ ಜಗತ್ತಿಗೆ ಆಧಾರ ಅಮೃತ ಶರಧಿ ಆನಂದದ ನಿಧಿ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ಆ ದೇವ ಬಾಳುವ ದೇವ ಮಂದಿರ ಬೇರೆಲ್ಲೂ ಅಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನದಲ್ಲೇ ಆ ದೇವ ಬಾಳುವ ದೇವ ಮಂದಿರ ಬೇರೆಲ್ಲೂ ಅಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನದಲ್ಲೇ ಅವರೇ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರತಿರೂಪ ಜ್ಞಾನ ದೀಪ ಭಕ್ತಿ ಪಯೋನಿಧಿ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರತಿರೂಪ ಜ್ಞಾನ ದೀಪ ಭಕ್ತಿ ಪಯೋನಿಧಿ ಅಮೃತ ಶರಧಿಯಾನಂದದ ನಿಧಿ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಇರುವರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂತೋಷ ಹೊಳೆಯಾಯ್ತು ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ತಂದೆ ರಮಣ ಇರುವರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂತೋಷ ಹೊಳೆಯಾಯ್ತು ಆ ದೇವ ಒಲಿಯುವರು ದುಃಖ ನೀಗುವರು ಪ್ರೇಮಾಮೃತವೋ ಎಂದು ಸಿಹಿಯೋ ಒಲಿಯುವರು ದುಃಖ ನೀಗುವರು ಅವರ ಪ್ರೇಮಾಮೃತವೋ ಎಂದು ಸಿಹಿಯೋ ಅಮೃತ ಶರಧಿ ಆನಂದದ ನಿಧಿ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ಅಮೃತ ಶರಧಿಯಾನಂದದ ನಿಧಿ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ರಮಣ ದೇವಾಶ್ರಮ ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Namo Ramana. We move on to the next part of the satsang. We have a reading and a sharing session by Sri Nandakumarji. He is reading from one of the books, Forever is in the Now.
Namo Ramana. In this, the book reading segment of the satsang, we continue our gleanings from Forever is in the Now, the timeless message of Sri Ramana Maharshi, edited and compiled by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We are about to read the second article of Ethel Marston. The introduction is given as Ethel Marston had settled down near Sri Ramanashramam for many years before and after Bhagavan's Mahanirvana. We had read the earlier article entitled Impressions and Reminiscences. Today we are about to read the article entitled Seeking. Seeking by Ethel Marston. Aware, unaware, asleep, awake, all men are drawn by instruments of the supreme power. These instruments themselves too are on various roads and on varying levels, leading to the Supreme Brahman, the Godhead, call it what you will. Men are drawn, often seemingly by hearsay or through books read, to the instrument or another, according to their need and state of awakenedness. When one is prepared by one instrument for a deeper level, then we are drawn to another instrument, another instrument level to teach us. No one instrument is for all men. Some people, for instance, came to the Maharishi and were untouched. The ultimate permeates all men. Both instruments and we, their pupils, are disciples at all stages of awakenedness to consciousness of the ultimate. So she is drawing a picture of the path the Jiva takes through various gurus, various instruments of God, the ultimate permeates all men, both instruments and we their pupils or disciples at all stages of awakenedness to consciousness of the ultimate. So finally it is the ultimate which should be attributed as the cause and the effect. So it was with me, from the grossest level of worldly knowledge, preparing me for the Maurice Nicole instrument, or the psychic level, who prepared me for P.D. Ouspensky, who in turn prepared me for the instrument G.I. Gurdjieff. Paul Brunton instrument, through his book, finally prepared me for the final instrument for me in this life, Sri Ramana Maharishi, the subtlest level I am able to grasp, and that only incompletely. And so, unconscious of my need for a further instrument, I was drawn, out of curiosity, I thought, to the feet of him who is Bhagavan to me. It took but a few moments after entering his hall to know that I was in the presence of the greatest teacher I had met. Whether an instrument or an avatar, I have no power or need to judge. Who am I to do so? He is for me at present the supreme teacher in outward form, leading, pointing, shaping my work towards a realization of the incorporate spirit within. He taught each seeker as suited to his need, some in silence, some by answering their questions vocally, or having something read to them which gave the answer to their problem. He was clairvoyant and could read our thoughts, and so knew our problems. Of psychic powers, siddhis, other than clairvoyance, I saw him use none, beyond conveying thought silently, and that so powerfully that its vibrations would sometimes roll in waves down the hall, almost hurting one by the force with which they impinged on the body, not only of the recipient for whom the thought was meant, but on many of us sitting there. Let us see how she sees Bhagavan's power to correct works. Of psychic powers, siddhis, and other than clairvoyance, I saw him use none, beyond conveying thought silently, and that so powerfully that its vibrations would sometimes roll in waves down the hall, almost hurting one by the force with which they impinged on the body, not only of the recipient for whom the thought was meant, but on many of us sitting there. Once I could almost see the wave coursing down the wall, directed at a man at the end of doing yogic practices, standing on his head. For a long time, the problem of the devotional or the jnana path worried me. So she is going to share with us a particular problem she has had and how Bhagavan helped her overcome that. For a long time, the problem of devotional or jnana path worried me. All around me in the hall, I saw people worshipping. And as many of them were old disciples of Maharishi, I felt that they must know the way to realization better than I. So I struggled and struggled to follow that path and feel exclusive devotion. I couldn't and got nowhere. One morning, almost in despair, I saw Bhagavan's eyes turned on me. And immediately, as though Bhagavan were projecting it, came the memory of something Gurdjieff, one of our earlier gurus, had said. For work, use that instrument which you have developed most. Work, of course, means spiritual work. For work, use that instrument which you have developed most. You have developed your mental center and suppressed your feeling center until it has almost atrophied. So the only instrument you have is the mind. That is your way. So Gurdjieff had pointed out to her that by suppressing her emotions, the emotional center had almost become dried out, inactive, completely dead, atrophied. So it was only the intellectual and mental center that was operating in her. But she had thought that she needs to relearn the devotion. So that was where the problem was. This was true, I knew. To avoid suffering as a child, I had developed a very quick brain at the expense of my very essential emotional nature. Now, Bhagavan was reminding me of this, and how gladly I dropped, without guilty conscience, the devotional path for the jnana way, which is indeed Bhagavan's essential teachings. It was a tremendous relief. Quite apart, though, from solving our problems, which Bhagavan had did in the earlier paragraph, quite apart, though, from solving our problems or helping us to do so, just to sit in Bhagavan's presence was to realize or get a feeling of what true relaxation and a quiet mind might mean. It did not mean, evidently, shutting oneself away, isolating oneself. Contrariwise, it meant being with all, yet remaining within. Being in the world, yet not of it. So I'll read that summary again. Quite apart, though, from solving our problems or helping us to solve our problems, just to sit in Bhagavan's presence was to realize or get a feeling of what true relaxation and a quiet mind might mean. It did not mean, evidently, shutting oneself away, isolating oneself. Contrariwise, it meant being with all, yet within, being in the world and yet not of it. And so I thank Bhagavan, the instrument who drew and has held me all these years. Om, Om, Om. We go to the next article, Facing the Sage by Mauni Sadhu. Let us see the introduction to Mauni Sadhu. Mauni Sadhu, his best known work is In the Days of Great Peace. In the Days of Great Peace, covering his stay with Ramana for some months in 1949, Ways to Self-Realization is another well-known book of Mauni Sadhu. We go into the article, Facing the Sage by Mauni Sadhu. About 16 years have passed since the departure of the Maharishi, the sage of Arunachala, at whose feet I spent several months in the spring and summer of 1949. Enough time has now elapsed to permit us a certain desirable perspective of the luminous appearance of Maharishi on the spiritual horizon of our small planet. Thousands of people streamed past the sage's modest couch, on which he spent the last months of his earthly life. I keenly observed the crowds of visitors trying to evaluate the influence of the master on all those erring souls, among whom there must also have genuine spiritual seekers, some of whom had come from other ends of the world. It is a well-known fact that in the Maharishi's presence, everyone felt himself to be different and better than before in his everyday life. The spiritual magnetism of the one who himself had found the final peace and wisdom could not fail to radiate on all of us, just as the sun sheds its rays on everything and everyone, good and bad alike. This is beyond any doubt. But what happened later? How many were able to retain their unique experience and to incorporate it into the pattern of their lives after they had left the ashram? Acceptance of the Guru's teachings means to work along his lines in the world. One simply feels obliged by the mute but inexorable inner law to try to repay the blessing and grace which one received in spite of one's imperfections and weaknesses. How can a man undertake such a work, that is, to repay the Guru's debt? I believe that this is possible only by following the Master's example, that is, by making his words of truth available and clear to all those who still have the eyes to see and ears to hear. Such a decision comes spontaneously and without any forethought. One simply knows what to do and does not worry about the means, for they invariably follow sometimes in a quite unexpected and unforeseen form. But what of the thousands who had received the grace of of seeing the sage with their own eyes? How many had forgotten the atmosphere so vibrant with peace and wisdom which surrounded the departing master? I sat at his feet from morning till evening, and one of the initial results that were noticed after the first few days was the realization of one's erroneous paths in the past, devoted to man's worst enemy, his ego, that hybrid arising between the body and the self. When I realized the greatness of Maharishi's achievement, I involuntarily turned to myself and said, "Here sits the sage without boasting of any titles or degrees, like the sun in comparison to my poor little candle." And then the first battle was won. I realized the emptiness of all human titles and degrees when the one, like Maharishi, had none of them. It is a well-known fact that Maharishi himself declared that, properly speaking, he had no name at all. Besides, after reaching the hill of Arunachala, he never put his signature to anything for the remainder of his life. Another transformation was the removal of all anxiety, which often devours many otherwise able souls who have not experienced the peace found at the Master's feet. How many people are worried about the fate of the world when at the same time they have not resolved their own problems? As you are, so is the world, said the sage. Hence, the world can be improved only by one's own improvement. If all work to do so, the world would become perfect. If all work to do so, that is to improve themselves, the world would soon be perfect. In another place, the Maharishi said that it is the Creator's duty to look after his world, but not ours. Now, these two paragraphs write his own improvement, his own changes in Bhagavan's presence. So, let us read that again, rather than look at how others have transformed or not, but how the writer himself received benefit at Bhagavan's presence facing the sage. Let us see those two paragraphs again and come to the conclusion of today's reading. I sat, these are the transforming experiences that the writer has had. I sat at his feet from morning till evening, and one of the initial results that were noted after the first few days was the realization of one's erroneous paths in the past, devoted to man's worst enemy, his ego, that hybrid arising between the body and the self. When I realized the greatness of the Maharishi's achievement, I involuntarily turned to myself and said, "Here sits the sage without boasting of any titles or degrees, like the sun in comparison to my poor little candle." And then the first battle was won. I realized the emptiness of all human titles and degrees when the one, like Maharishi, had none of them. So the ego, trying to get to some persona and then feeling fulfilled, is completely wiped out in the great presence of Bhagavan there. It is a well-known fact that the Maharishi himself declared that, properly speaking, he had no name at all. And besides, after reaching the hill of Arunachala, he never put his signature on anything for the remainder of his life. The second transformation, the writer says, another transformation was the removal of all anxiety, which often devours many otherwise able souls who have not experienced the peace found at the Master's feet. How many people are worried about the fate of the world, when at the same time they have not resolved their own problems. As you are, so is the world, said the sage. Hence, the world can be improved only by one's own improvement. If all work to do so, that is, focus on one's own improvement alone, if all work to do so, the world would soon become perfect. In another place, the Maharishi said, it is the Creator's duty to look after his world, but not ours. So the removal of the egoistic nature of pursuit and the removal of anxiety completely, the writer says, were the benefits that he received at Bhagavan's feet. There is a little bit more to read, but with Bhagavan's grace, will continue in the coming weeks. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We continue with the self-enquiry session guided by Shri Dileep Simha ji.
Jayet Sharada Chandra Sundara Mukam Tamraravindekshana Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojjvalam Svatmanandarasānubhūti vivasham Sarvanavadhyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hrudaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamahamiti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hrudi Vishamanasa Swam Chinvata Machatava Pavana Chalana Rodhat Atmanishto Bhavatvam. We will commence the evening Atma Vicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. I will be reading from the book Guru Vachaka Kovai from the chapter Meditation on the Truth. The topic is the True Temple, verse 7-11. He who does not know through a subtle enquiry the truth that God is himself the temple for both the jiva and the world will build a temple consisting of many enclosures, prakaras, restrict God to an idol, and perform elaborate and magnificent worship to it. I repeat, he who does not know through subtle enquiry the truth that God is himself the temple for both the jiva and the world will build a temple consisting of many enclosures, prakaras, restrict God to an idol, and perform elaborate and magnificent worship to it. In a way, it is the state of a jiva's affair. Instead of recognizing that itself is the self of all, or the one self that it is, which is, it takes these many layers of the ego, intellect, mind, body, and many possessions in the world as its identity, and then goes on worshipping them. Each of these are nothing but idolizing the self, the formless, the ever conscious, ever present self luminous self, limiting it to a form which is not self luminous and believing it to be self luminous. We think the ego is real, but actually the self alone is real. We think the mind is real. Actually, the self alone is real. We think our intellect is real, our body is real, this world is real. And we do magnificent worship and elaborate worship also. From morning till evening, we continue to worship. So, Bhagavan is saying here only through the subtle inquiry, the truth that we are the screen, the self is the screen on which all of them are appearing, sustaining, and getting absorbed back without understanding the natural truth that is there. To superimpose such a self with all these limited identities, limitations, and worship them elaborately is not the right approach, says Bhagavan here. So, for that, because every such worship starts by identifying ourselves with a thought. The foremost of it is the I thought. Therefore, Bhagavan says, no matter what kind of thought rises within us, whether it is good, bad, ugly, spiritual, it all has arisen to whom, when we inquire, we will recognize it is for me. Thereupon, we understand that me, when we are saying, is the identification with this body, with this mind. Therefore, he immediately asks us to inquire, who am I? What do I really refer to as I within me? Or where from this I thought has arisen within me? When we trace the I back to the source, then we see that there is only the ever present self luminous self without a division, like an expanse of a space without any limitation. And by repeatedly getting back to that self that we are, we recognize that the peace is our real nature, happiness is our real nature. And that is what we have been looking, but looking wrongly by idolizing the self and worshipping it day and night. So, by that recognition, we recognize that we are that one self here and now. For that, Bhagavan has blessed us with this Atma Vichara, with the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. Let us do Atma Vichara for the next 10 minutes. Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. In the same mood of self-enquiry, we continue the satsang with a sharing by Dr. Kalarani Rengasamy. She has been meditating on a work translated by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, Devikalotram Jnana Vichara-padalam. We have a sharing by Dr. Kalarani Rengasamy.
ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam, very graciously given to us by Bhagavan in Tamil. And in the last satsang, we saw, don't get excited by the worldly objects and don't get attached to them. Only when no room is given for outside object, the mind will start imagining itself as Atma, the self. That is Bhavana. Bhagavan says, go beyond this Bhavana also. Because for Bhavana, there must be a Bhavana Vastu and the person who makes the Bhavana. So Bhagavan says, சித்தம் ஈது அந்தரங்க பாவனை விட்டு, leave off that bhavana, ஆச்சரியம் இன்றியதாய் சந்ததமும் செய்திடவே தான். And in the next stanza, Bhagavan says, by forbidding the mind to imagine itself as Brahman, that is by doing bhavana as Aham Brahmasmi, and as said in the last stanza, by not making the mind to oscillate or wander outside and get excited, what will happen to the mind? Because both way is closed. It cannot hold anything inside, neither it can catch hold of anything outside. The very nature of mind is to get attached to something. It cannot stand aloof or alone. In உள்ளது நாற்பது, Bhagavan beautifully says, உருப்பற்றி உண்டாம் உருப்பற்றி நிற்கும் உருப்பற்றி உண்டு மிக ஓங்கும். It needs something to hold. By catching hold of the mind, thinking that it is I, wrongly, enters into lots and lots of Vishayajnana, and with the result what happens, it experiences the Sukha Dukkha alternatively. When the mind is forbidden not to catch hold of the worldly object through sadhana, and there should be no thought about them, it has no other go other than to go inside. In that process, what happens? It makes a bhavana that the vastu inside is I. Bhagavan says, go beyond that bhavana also. Because self cannot be imagined. It cannot be compared with something. It is beyond compare. ஓங்காரப்பொருள் ஒப்புயர்வில்லோய் உனை யார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா, says in Aksharamanamalai. Hey Arunachala, who can fully understand you? You are beyond comparison. It will be like, if we compare, how will it be? It will be like 6 blind men describing an elephant. The person who touches the body of the elephant says, the elephant is like a wall. The other may say, no, it's like a pillar. Other one says, no, it's very soft by holding the trunk and so flexible it is. Another person says, no, it's like a rope catching hold of the tail. And yet another says it is like a horn. No one could describe an elephant completely because they are blind. It will be like this when one starts describing the self or imagining the self. So Bhagavan says, cross that imagination also, overcome the bhavana. Okay, when that is also done with sadhana, now the mind, neither it can imagine itself as Atma, nor it can catch hold of worldly things. What will happen to the mind? Now it will go to sleep. When there is nothing to hold, the mind has to sleep. As the mind has to catch hold of something which is its nature. And now, by doing sadhana, when it is now both inside and outside, it starts stand as nirgadi. There is no support. The only gadi is sleep, and it goes to sleep. He needs not take any effort to sleep at this juncture. Realizing his loneliness, sleep automatically comes to him. Bhagavan says, awake him from that sleep. உறக்கத்தினின்று உணர்த்திடுக. When the mind awakens, what will happen? It will again get oscillated. It wants to catch hold of something in the body objects. All the ubadhyas will creep in. Oh, I have to do so many things. I have to do this job at a superior rate. Already I am late for the office. Can I go to the office in my own vehicle or can I call a taxi? So many confusions, so many decisions because I have to reach earlier. So many things. If it is not so, it will start imagine the self as I. So Bhagavan says, உறக்கத்தினின்றும் உணர்த்திடுக பின்னர் சித்தம் சலனம் உற்றிட் உடுக்காய். After awakening the mind from the sleep, if it oscillates, go behind the worldly things, then what should be done? Instruct the mind not to do so through sadhana again and again. Even during dhyanam, Bhagavan says, even during dhyanam, either mantra japa or rupa dhyanam or whatever it is, as there is no other thought, one may go to sleep. Bhagavan says, wake up. And if thoughts creeps in again, one should not hold on to the thought, but instead he should destroy the thought just by watching those thoughts and not responding to those thoughts. Once a devotee said, Bhagavan, my higher ups are scolding me for no fault of mine. I feel very bad and I'm hurt. Bhagavan said, it's okay. Scold yourself. This is sadhana. So, by struggling between these two, sleep and oscillation of the mind, one attains the state of non-sleep, at the same time non-oscillation of the mind, which is the true state. Bhagavan says, without any frustration, be in that state. உறக்கத்தினின்று உணர்த்திடுக பின்னர் சித்தம் சலனம் உடுக்காய் உறக்கம் அலைவெண்ணை என்னும் இரண்டும் அற்ற நிலை உற்றல் நிலை இதனில் நிச்சலமாய் நிற்கும். How will it this state be? How will it this state be with light? We don't have any connection with the Vishaya in deep sleep. Peace only provides, isn't it? But I should be awake. At the same time, in this awakening state, there should be no oscillation of the thoughts. So, this state is a combination of peacefulness that is there in the sleep and the awareness of the waking state. உறக்கம் அலைவென்னும் இவை இரண்டும் அற்ற நிலை. Because if we give room for sleep, in that darkness, what happens? There is no mind, there is no ego, and only with the mind one can do the vichara and realize the self. When mind oscillates also, we cannot concentrate on self. So, give attention to the self because our concentration will be outside. We have to drag the mind and put it again. When both the way is locked, the mind is in a confusion. The mind thinks, I'm not allowed to sleep and I'm not allowed to wander also. Then what am I to do? Bhagavan says, make the mind as stand aloof. Make the mind to stand aloof. That is the state of samadhi. He is awake as in the waking state, and not even a bit of oscillation or wandering is there. He is experiencing the Shanti as he is in sleeping state, but at the same time awake. In Tamil, this state is called Arituyil Nilai. Bhagavan says, be in that state. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We have moved on to the next part of the satsang, where we are meditating on the verses of Ramana Chatvarimshat written by Ganapati Muni, and they have been compiled in this format of Ramana Chatvarimshat by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. We are moving on to the next verse, which is the verse 19. Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha, Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha, Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha, Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha, Vairagyam Tava Vittamasti Karunam Shaknoshi Hatum Katam Dushastestestu Samudyama Pitripada Dhyanam Chakim Tadrisham Kamastestu Vigarhito Vinamatam Raksha Chakim Garhita Skanda Chadma Manushya Kimnu Samayam Kanchet Samudvikshate Kanchet Samudvikshase Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha, Ramanaya Loka Gurave Namaha, Vairagya Ninanidiyagirali Karuneya Toreudu Sariye Nindisalarhavagirali Swayam Yatnavu ತಂದೆ ಅಡಿ ಧ್ಯಾನ ಹಾಗಿರಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ ಕಾಮವು ತಿರಸ್ಕರಿಸಲರ್ಹವು ಭಕ್ತರ ರಕ್ಷಣೆ ತಿರಸ್ಕರಿಸಬಹುದೇ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಛದ್ಮದರ ಸ್ಕಂದನೆ ಯಾವ ಸುಸಮಯಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾದಿರುವೆ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ. These verses have been set to the raga Hindola by Srimati Sulochana Natarajan. The Hindola raga is a raga which is vibrant, and here Ganapati Muni has been waiting and praying for Ramana to intervene quickly, but seeing that the Ramana is like Mauniyai Karpol Malaradirindal Maunavidavo Arunachala. Is it the right thing to be silent like a stone? You need to move and tell us the glory of your silence. So it is the right time for you. Quickly intervene. Why are you wasting your time? Why are you waiting? Are you waiting for a good muhurtam to come? Why are you waiting? Rabindranath Tagore, in one of his poems, he says that, "O God, O Supreme, you have millions of years to perfect a flower. We know that the all living beings has evolved and it has taken millions of years to be in this beautiful form. For you, O Divine, you have millions of years to perfect every being. But I don't have so much time. I have this limited time, and you have to quickly come and make me perfect in this short lifespan of mine, says Rabindranath Tagore. And we also have heard in the story of the Ardhanarishwara, when Parvati Devi, thinking the great poets have written, the saints have sung the glory of Shiva as the Shiva, one who wears the Surya and Chandra, the sun and the moon and the Agni as his three eyes. Is this true, or is it only a metaphor used by the saint poets? So she had this question, and to test this, she slowly, playfully went behind Shiva and closed the two eyes of Shiva. And the one moment for Shiva and Parvati, it is ages in the world. So the world was filled with darkness for many, many yugas, and there was this untimely deluge. And realizing her mistake, Parvati Devi removed her eyes and she said, I have done a mistake, and as the prayashchitam, I will go to the earth and do tapasya. That's the story how she performs tapasya at Kashi, Kanchi and Arunachala and becomes one with Shiva. This shows that one moment for the divine is many, many yugas. So when we are waiting for yugas for the divine to incarnate, to come amidst us and to tell the truth, it looks for us as a long time, but for the Supreme, this is all a child's play. It is only an act of a moment. So Ganpati Muni saying, O Skanda, who has come in the human form, why are you waiting? Quickly come and show your compassion. We all know that you, O Skanda Ramana, you are known for your Vairagya. It is your wealth. Kabir says, the one who does not have any desire, one who is a Vairagi, is like a king. That we can see in the life of Ramana. Ramana left his home, the comfort of his home, and he came to Arunachala. And when he came to Arunachala and reported, Father, I have come, and he embraced the Arunachaleshwara Linga. And when he was coming out, a barber came to him, approached him and said, today we have a special day for barbers at the Ayyankulam tank, and I would like to offer my service to a sage, a sadhu. Would you like to shave your head today? And Ramana agreed, and he was taken to the Ayyankulam tank, and he did not even have the attachment to the body and the beauty of the body with the hair. He just offered his head, and the head was shaven, and after that he did not even have a bath. One of the Harikatha devotee, she said that Ramana did thought that why should this body even have the comfort of taking a bath in the pond. He didn't even have the attachment of taking a bath for this body. Such was his detachment, such was his Vairagya. And after that, he removed all his clothes that he was wearing and he threw it away into the Ayyankulam tank. He also threw the small packet of sweets that was given to him by a couple on his way, because it was the prasadam of Krishna Janmashtami. That also he threw it into the Ayyankulam tank, and even the few coins of money that he had, he threw it into the pond, and he even threw his sacred thread, and just wearing the kaupina, he re-entered the Arunachaleshwara temple. Such was his Vairagya. He did not even have a thought that what will happen for the next meal. Maybe I should have the sweets for the next meal. I should have this money for some other purpose which I may need. I may need these clothes. If my loin cloths get spoiled, then I may need this cloth. He did not have any of such thoughts. He was like the king, and he had complete faith that the Arunachala who has brought him to his presence will take care of him. Such was his Vairagya. So he led a life of a great Vairagi who was like a king. And he was the Jagadishwara Shastri says he is Shrimantam. Ramana is Shrimantam because he did not have any wants. But oh Ramana, you are such a Vairagi, and you don't care about anything else. You are complete in yourself. You are ever fulfilled. But don't you have to show Karuna to us? Is it not your duty to show Karuna? When Ramana was staying in the Virupaksha cave and sitting on a rock, a small boy approached Ramana, and seeing the state of Ramana, that little boy started crying. And Ramana asked, "Oh little boy, why are you crying?" And that little boy asked, "Oh, you have only this one dress to wear or what?" And Ramana replied, "Yes, I have only this dress to wear." And then he asked, "Where do you stay?" Ramana told, "I stay in this cave, or I stay on one of these rocks on Arunachala." And then he told, the little boy asked, "Oh, you stay here in the cave on Arunachala hill. Are you not afraid of the wild animals which come and go?" Then Ramana replied, "Yes, the wild animals come and go, but they don't harm anyone. If we don't harm them, they don't harm us." Then the boy said, "Where do you sleep?" Ramana replied, "I sleep here on one of these rocks." And that little boy was very, very moved, and he told, "Swami, do you know my master, my Malika is very, very good, and he will, if he gives you a job, will you do that job? He will give us food, he'll give us shelter, and he'll give us clothing also. And do you know, he'll give us 1 rupee every month. So will you come and do the job?" He asks Ramana. And Ramana, smiling at that little boy and seeing that how that boy was so soft, and he melted seeing the position of Ramana, he told, yes, I will surely work. You go and ask your master and come back," said Bhagavan Ramana. And the devotees around wondered, how is this? Bhagavan Ramana is saying that he will go and work under that master. And the Ramana replied, "Oh, when that Supreme Master has some other plan, that Supreme Master has given us some other job. Let us see what happens." And such was the Vairagya of Ramana. Seeing that Vairagya, we all, the devotees around, would have felt Karuna towards him. But Ramana, who loved everyone, was much more the Karuna that we showed to seeing the position of Ramana. Ramana laughs and smiles. Seeing us, he shows Karuna that you have everything that is comfortable, but you are not happy as I am. So he tells us through his life and teaching, tells us to get back to our own true happiness, which is our own true nature, and which is not attached to any of the outer comforts that we seek happiness in. To teach us this wealth that we have, Ramana had to come in the human form and stay at Arunachala as the king of Vairagya. And he stayed there in the throne of Arunachala, disseminating that wealth to all of us. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Saluting to that Ramana, the great Vairagi, we have been meditating on his journey towards Arunachala by the sharing by Dr. Sarada. She has been meditating on the verses from Ramana Ashtottara written by Vishwanath Swami. I request Dr. Sarada to continue her sharing of Ramana Ashtottara.
Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana. shining as a self, as all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating on the verses of Ramana Ashtottara, composed by Vishwanatha Swami. And we are actually meditating on the Ashtottara Namavali form and not on the Stotram. There are two forms of this Ashtottara. One is the Stotram. Even in the Sahasranama, we will find that normally what we chant in the Lalita Sahasranama, in the Vishnu Sahasranama, this is the Stotram, not the Namavali. The Namavali is used for puja. But most of the devotees are familiar with the Ashtottara Namavali, which is used for Bhagavan's puja in Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, at Sri Ramanashramam, and in many other centers in many other Ramana centers across the world. So we are meditating on the namas in the Ramana Ashtottara Shata Namavali. And we are on the Nama Om Pitrapadan Veshine Namaha, one who set out in search of his father's feet or his father's state. In search of the father, says Bhagavan, in essence, a sacred journey which happened 125 years ago. We are now on the 125th year of that journey. Actually, the 100th year of this journey and arrival at Arunachala, which was preceded by that epoch-making event, which is the enlightenment of Bhagavan Ramana. The 100th year of the enlightenment and the 100th year of the advent of Bhagavan to Arunachala were celebrated in a very joyous manner over several years by Sri Ramanashramam and Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning. And we are now in the 125th year of that event, and perhaps the celebration begins and continues in the best manner by doing mananam, by doing meditation on the significance of this event, on the beauty of this event. We don't even need to wonder about the significance. Just meditating on the event itself, just listening to that story in itself is ennobling. Because we see that simple innocence and faith of that boy of 16, Bhagavan Ramana, a boy of 16, absolutely innocent. Actually, we see Bhagavan's innocence even later. He is, of course, the Sarvajna. He knows everything that is to be known because he is a knower of the self. But in many jnanis, we see also the childlike innocence. There is that aspect of innocence which is always there in them. And that's why we say also that the child is divine because of the aspect of innocence. Not otherwise, not because of being devoid of identity, but because of the aspect of innocence. And here is this innocent boy, innocent because of total faith. There are no questions. Just now, Ujwal Jagadeesh was telling us that he could throw away everything that belonged to him without a single thought. Without a second thought, we normally say, without even a first thought, without a single thought about it. So this beautiful faith, absolute faith, which allowed this young boy to set out in search of his father. He knows Tiruvannamalai. He has heard of Tiruvannamalai being a place on earth. Arunachala is Tiruvannamalai. He knows that Tiruvannamalai is in Tamil Nadu or not very far from wherever he was situated, which is Madurai, and it can be most of the way can be covered by train. This is what he understood. Most of the way can be covered by train. That is up to Tindivanam. And with that, and with his estimate that it would take 3 rupees to reach there, even at that point when he left home, he did not think, what will I do for my food during the journey? What will I do for food, clothing and shelter after reaching Tiruvannamalai? So there is just the search for the Father, nothing else. Nothing else. In obedience to his command, going in search of the Father. And actually, that is so much of love. What else can we say? And he has set out, and of course, Arunachala has guided him that he can go not just up to Tindivanam, he can go right up to Tiruvannamalai by train. But the required money for the train fare is not available. Part of the money is there, and he has traveled after getting down at Virupuram, after having been given a meal free by a hotel keeper over there, a blessed hotel keeper. He has gone further. I say a blessed hotel keeper. Once Swami Virajananda, also a great devotee of Bhagavan Ramana, he said, there are of yogis, many kinds of eating. We also partake of food frequently. But the yogis, some of them, they have only one meal in a day. And it is, he said, they are Vaishwanara. That is, he said, when such yogis, those who have only one meal in a day, when they partake of that meal, the entire universe eats. The entire universe is fed. So this young boy on that day, this young Venkataraman, he got only one meal to eat that day because he went ahead. He went to Ariyaninallur after going to Mambalapattu by train, along the railway track. And though it's not the Agni Nakshatram, though it's not the hottest period of the year, in Tamil Nadu, in the afternoon, mid-afternoon, evening, and in those days, barefoot, walking there along the railway track, which would have had hardly any shade because the railway track. And the railway track, on both sides of the track, it will be empty, it will be open space. So in order to keep the track clear from any hurdles and obstacles and not to disturb anything by the onrush of the train, he has been walking along the railway track. What must have been the heat? So he arrived at Ariyaninallur, the temple we saw, where that temple was actually, it was famed for giving the princesses of that place had given gifts galore. So it was called Arankanda Nallur. It was so famous. And of course, because it's on the rock, it's called Ariyaninallur, which is on the rock, the temple on the rock, the huge rock. In this temple, where there had been much of giving, much of generosity, Bhagavan had, like Jnana Sambandar, a vision of the light of Arunachala. Jnana Sambandar had seen from there Arunachala. He had had the first darshan of Arunachala from the temple. But after Araganda Nalleshwarar, from the Sannidhi over there. But after seeing that light, when this young boy Venkatraman asked the priest for some food, the priest said, no, we do not have any food over here. We cannot give you any food over here. You could go to the Kilur temple where food may be given to you or to the devotees. So this young boy he was hungry. He must have been very, very tired. And because of that also, he may have been hungry. He walked again along with the priest to that temple at Ilur. And there we have Veerateshwara, the temple of Ilur. It is, Muruganar Swami talks about the 8 kshetras where Shiva is manifest in his valorous form. Veera he is valorous over there. So, Veeram Etturil Vaitha, in his beautiful composition Vaitapathu, the master of proper placement, in that he says Etturil Vaitha. So, Venkata Veeranare, he is the one who is Veera. He is so valorous, he is so courageous. There is a Nama in Ashtottara also, Dhiraya Namaha. This valorous, because ready to face the entirety of life, without any thought about it. What can be more valorous? Of course, he had faced death itself. What could be more valorous? And now he has left home without any thought about it, without the least trace of fear, anxiety, even a thought. And then he comes to this Veerakshetra of Veerateshwara, and there again he asks whether he could get some food. And it is told to him that he can only those who serve in the temple there will be given food. At this juncture, we find that there is a drummer who has been, of course, serving in the temple. And he offers his share of the food to this young boy. He must have been attracted by this young boy. And Sadhu Swami has a very, very, very beautiful poem describing this episode. It's like the drummer is turning to all the priests and telling them, can you not see who is standing here? Who is holding out his hands, is seeking alms, seeking food, holding out his hands like a begging bowl. Ganapati Muni says, Karatamarasena Supatravata. The beautiful lotus hands were used by him as a vessel for taking the food. So he says, Shivan, Kayendi Nirkudada, Shivan, beautifully tuned by Sri K.S. Raghunathan. And he says, Shivan Ido. It is Shivan. Can you not see Lord Shiva himself? Our own Veerateshwara himself is standing here and asking for alms. Can you not see? And when we had the sharing in the Yattirai Kandam on this beautiful journey of Bhagavan to Arunachala, the thought came that when he says this to the priest, then Shiva says to this drummer, oh, my dear devotee, it is beautiful that you see me in that young boy, in that boy of 16. But do you see that you who are wanting to give food to them, to that boy, and the priests who are refusing to give the food are all nothing but me. So it is the Leela of Shiva that in that manifestation, he comes as the Ramana Shakti and he comes as the priest who say, no, you will not be given food by us. And he came as the drummer who saw the radiance of the divine in him and said, please have my food. So it was like he took that meal with him, took that food, and probably in a leaf plate it was given to him. And he had he had been trained in certain ways of life, certain disciplines, like washing his hands and feet before eating. And naturally, he must have been thirsty also. He asked whether he could get some water somewhere, and before he could go to the place where he could get the water, he swooned and fell. And all the food, that food which was given to him, was also scattered on the road. So, in effect, he had that only one meal that day. Of course, there's a very touching scene which we have where Bhagavan, after waking up from his swoon, picks up the rice which is scattered on the road and eats it, eats some of it, whatever he ate for that night. And then he took rest in a house nearby. For that night, he lay down and slept. There used to be what is in Kannada called the jagli. In the veranda, there will be a raised platform. In Tamil, we call it tinnai. It is called tinnai. It is a raised platform. Outside the house, there may be one or two, and there are pillars, and there will be a porch. In the ending of the porch or at the sides of the porch, there will be these raised platforms. And the people of the house used to sit on these platforms, on these tinnais or jaglis, and they used to enjoy the natural breeze of the evenings. The evenings would be cool in those days. There would be a breeze when the evenings came, and they would sit outside because there was no question of having a fan, there was no electricity. And this place was also used for chatter and discussions and sometimes playing games, and there are interesting episodes. So, in this porch of the Payal, Bhagwan spent the night. After eating, we have heard that some people take up even vows that they will eat without a plate. They will eat on the floor, the mud floor. They will have themselves served on that. These are all very, what does one say, very severe vows that people undertake to get over adversity, to get over difficulties. But what adversity did this young boy have? What difficulty did he have? But if we see Bhagavan's journey, that begins with the journey to Arunachala, and later the 54 years of his staying in the body there at Arunachala, 54 years of his physical spiritual ministration, we find that it is entirely a tapasya. It is entirely a penance undertaken for whose sake? Only for the pure welfare of the world, without again any thought about it. Naturally being in that state of penance for the welfare of the world, not anything for himself, because there was no need for himself. There was no thought about himself. Where is the question of need? Arunachala completely engulfed him, filled him. There was thought only of Arunachala. Therefore, there was no planning, there was no possibility of thinking much also about how will I get over this adverse situation, what will I do, where will I go, where will I sleep. There are no such thoughts at all. The absolute surrender of Bhagavan we can see, and it is something extraordinarily beautiful for us to meditate upon whenever we can, whenever we feel in any way despondent or anxious about our own life in the world, or even about our spiritual progress. Here is Bhagavan's example before us to say, trust Arunachala, trust me, put your complete faith in me. I will take care. I will take care. I know what is best. I will take care. I will guide you. I will lead you. And the way I will lead you may appear to be easy or difficult, but why do you want to think about it? Don't even think about it. When you don't think about it, when you think only about me, then where is difficulty? Where is pain? Where is sorrow? Bhagavan says in his நவமணிமாலை குறையும் குணமும் நீ அல்லால் எண்ணேன் இவற்றை அண்ணாமலையாய் அடியேனை ஆண்ட அன்றே ஆவி உடல் கொண்டாய். You have just completely taken over. You have swallowed my being, my mind and my body. You have swallowed my mind and my body. Then what is left for me to think about? Or you are only there for all for me. Kurayum gunamum nee alla. You're the good, you're the bad. If you're the good and you're the bad, how can I distinguish between them? How can I think, oh, is this good, is this bad? There is no need. Everything is only Arunachala. Yennen ivatrai. And he who is so full of love says, give me more love. Give me love for your feet. Give me love for your feet. He asks. That for whose sake is he asking? He's asking for our sake, to turn our attention to that love, to turn our attention to the absolute marvel of that love. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We come to the concluding part of the satsang. We have the chanting of a few verses from Ramana's Arunachala Aksharamanamalai by Srimati V.Radha and Vallabh Srinivasan. This will be followed by the Ashtottara puja to Bhagavan by Sri Dileep Simha at his altar. The chanting of the Ashtottara will be done by Vaibhavji and Prarthana, followed by Uma and Ashwini. The brief Arathi song will be sung by Revathi Sankar.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. கோபமில் குணத்தோய் புரியாயனை கொள்ள குறையன் செய்தேன் அருணாச்சலா. கருணை மாமலையே கடைக்கணித்தாழ்வாய் அருணாச்சலா. சகலமும் விழுங்கும் கதிரொளியின மன ஜலஜமல தீடருணாச்சலா. காப்பாடுன்னை சாருணவாயான் சாந்தமை போவன் அருணாச்சலா. சித்தம் குளிர கதிரஸ்தம் வைத்த முதவையை திர அருள்மணி அருணாச்சலா. சீரை அழித்த நிர்வாணம் செய்தருள் சீரை அழித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. சுகக்கடல் பொங்க சொல்லுணர்வடு சும்மா பொருந்திடங்கருணாச்சலா. சூது செய்தென்னை சோதி அதினி உஞ்சோதி ஒரு காட்டருணாச்சலா. செப்படி வித்தை கற்றிப்படி மயக்க விட்டுருபடி வித்தை காட்டருணாச்சலா. பேராயனின்மை நீராயுருகி கண்ணீராற்றழிவேன் அருணாச்சலா. தீயன தள்ளீர் செய்வினை சுடுமலர் உய்வகையே துரை அருணாச்சலா. சொல்லாது சொல்லி நீ சொல்லரனில் என்று சும்மா இருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचल शिव अरुणाचल अरुणाचलम വാഴി അന്തർകളും വാഴി അക്ഷരമണമാലൈ വാഴി നമോ
नमो रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशेः यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं कबीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्धितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीय सुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तगाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदाम्बेशिने नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसम्भ्रमाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहास्यश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः ॐ विरूपाक्षभावासाय नमः ॐ विराजदशलाकृतये नमः ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः ॐ पूर्णाय नमः ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः ॐ गम्भीराय नमः ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः ॐ धीराय नमः ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः ॐ स्वराजये नमः ॐ महर्षये नमः ॐ भगवते नमः ॐ ईद्याय नमः
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः ॐ विमलाय नमः ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः ॐ आप्ताय नमः ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री षोडाचलहृद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्छिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋचान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णावतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजलिं प्राप्य तत् दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ಬ್ರಹ್ಮನಿಷ್ಠ ಸಮದರ್ಶಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡ್ ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।